Holy shit. He said what?
Everybody trying to be a victim. Like, what's this girl, Meghan Markle? Seemed like a nice lady, just complaining. I was like, didn't she hit the light skin lottery? And still going on complaining, acting all dumb like she don't know nothing. Going on Oprah, I didn't know. I had no idea how racist they were. It's the royal family. You didn't Google these motherfuckers?
Picture this. The stage lights dim, the crowd buzzes with anticipation, and Chris Rock, one of the sharpest comedic voices alive, steps out into the spotlight. For decades,
the biggest addiction in America is attention. We are addicted to attention. Easiest way to get attention is to be a victim.
For decades, audiences have come to expect Rock to push boundaries, to make people laugh at uncomfortable truths. But on this night, it wasn't just a comedy special, it was something else. Entirely. Because the moment he opened his mouth, it became clear that Rock wasn't here to dance around polite society. He wasn't here to tiptoe through political correctness or soft jabs. He had one target in his sights, and he aimed with surgical precision. That target? Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex.
Seen that video?
No.
Pull that video up, because it's one of my favorites.
They're so racist, they're so racist. Some of the shit she went through was not racism. It was just some in-law shit. Because she's complaining, I'm like, what the is she talking about? No, Oprah, they're so racist. They wanted to know how brown the baby's gonna be. I'm like, that's not racist. Because even black people want to know.
Now think about that for a moment. Meghan had spent years shaping her image. Every interview, every carefully staged photograph, every Oprah sit-down was designed to reinforce one central story, that she was a naive Hollywood actress blindsided by the monarchy's cold, rigid traditions, that she didn't know what she was walking into, that she was an innocent who just wanted love but got caught in the machine of an outdated royal system. It was the story of a victim, and millions believed it. But Rock, he wasn't buying it, and he wasn't going to politely disagree. He was going to torch it, right there on stage in front of a live audience and on a Netflix special that would be streamed around the globe. The first words out of his mouth weren't a warm...
What the f*** is she talking about? She didn't know. It's the royal family. They're the original racists.
The first words out of his mouth weren't a warm-up or setup. They were a strike, and the reaction was instant. Crowd gasped, then roared with laughter, and then, something even more devastating, there was silence. The kind of silence where people stop to think. The kind where the laughter dies down, and suddenly the joke doesn't just feel like comedy anymore. It feels like truth. That's the danger of a Christian.
Up pathetic pictures. This is me eating sushi. Like me. This is me 25 years ago when I was hot. Like me. Oh, it's f***ing sick.
That's the danger of a Chris Rock punchline. It doesn't just sting, it lingers. And that night, Meghan Markle's carefully protected image began to crumble. What had once been her strongest weapon, her ability to frame herself as the underdog, was suddenly her biggest weakness. So, let me ask you this. Was this really just comedy? Was this the moment the world delivered its verdict on Meghan Markle? Because what Rock did on that stage did stay on that stage. It exploded outward. It set off a chain reaction across late-night television, across social media, across pop culture itself. One 5-minute roast snowballed into a global takedown Meghan and Harry could never recover from. But before we get to the memes, before South Park immortalized the couple as walking contradictions, before late-night hosts turned them into their easiest punchline, it all started with one merciless blow. Chris Rock didn't build up to it. He didn't ease the subject like most comedians would. He went straight for Meghan Markle, as if he had been waiting for this moment. And when he said it, you could feel the air shift in the room. Everybody wants to be a victim, he declared. Like, what's this girl, Meghan Markle? Didn't she hit the light-skinned lottery and still acting like she's got it rough? The words cut through the theater like a blade. Laughter erupted, but it wasn't the easy, lighthearted laughter of a silly joke. It was louder, harsher, almost nervous. People weren't just laughing at Meghan. They were laughing at the absurdity of her narrative. And for some in the audience, it was like finally hearing out loud what they had been thinking all along but hadn't dared to say. Rock didn't stop there. He went to one of Meghan's most repeated claims, that she had no idea what she was marrying into. She's on Oprah like, I didn't know. I had no idea how racist they were, Rock mocked, tilting his head, imitating her voice. Then he hit the punch. It's the royal family. You didn't Google these people.
It's the royal family!
You did Google these people. You didn't know the royal family's racist. They're the original racists. The crowd exploded. Some people were bent over in laughter, some clapped furiously, and others shook their heads as if they couldn't believe he had actually said it. But that's the power of Chris Rock. He said what others are too afraid to. And here's the brilliance of it. These weren't complicated jokes. They weren't inside references. They were simple, blunt observations dressed up as comedy. Sometimes the simplest truths are the hardest to ignore. Think about Meghan's story for a second. For years, she positioned herself as the outsider who had no clue about the monarchy, who walked in blind. Does anyone really believe that? Rock didn't. And with the single line, "You didn't Google the people," he dismantled that entire narrative. The silence that followed each punchline was even more damning than the laughter, because in those quiet beats, the audience was processing. They were connecting dots. They were realizing maybe Meghan's story never quite added up. It was the comedy equivalent of pulling the mask off a character. In less than 60 seconds, Rock turned Meghan Markle from a sympathetic underdog into the butt of the biggest joke in the room. And the crowd wasn't just laughing at her, they were laughing at the fact that they had once believed her. That's why this first blow mattered so much. It wasn't just about Meghan Markle, it was about the narrative she had sold to the world, and how fragile it really was. One comedian, one stage, one joke, and suddenly the illusion cracked. And when the illusion cracked, it wasn't just the crowd inside that theater who noticed. Because the moment Rock's special dropped on Netflix, clips of that set started circulating. TikTok, Twitter, YouTube. Within hours, his words were everywhere. And once the internet got hold of it, the firestorm was unstoppable. But Rock's opening wasn't just about jokes. It was a cultural spark.
She was hunting for a man in England. She wanted wealth and she wanted fame, and she targeted Harry.
But Rock's opening wasn't just about jokes. It was a cultural spark, and followed would spread far beyond a Netflix comedy stage. For years, Meghan Markle's entire public persona rested on one fragile foundation, the image of a woman who simply didn't know. She didn't know how strict the monarchy was. She didn't know how cold and racist the institution could be. She didn't know what life would look like as a duchess. At least, that's what she told the world. And for a while, that story worked. It painted her as the innocent actress swept into a fairy tale gong. But with a handful of lines, Chris Rock cracked that illusion wide open. His words were like a mirror held up to the audience, forcing them to ask the obvious question, how could Meghan not know? How could an intelligent, educated, worldly Hollywood actress, one who had dated Prince Harry for years, walk into Buckingham Palace with no clue what she was signing up for? Rock compared it to a basketball player claiming they'd never heard of the NBA. The analogy was so sharp, so absurdly simple, the crowd couldn't help but laugh. And that's the genius of comedy. It can dismantle years of PR with one joke. The moment he said it, Meghan's fairy tale narrative collapsed.
What is she talking about? I didn't know. That's like marrying into the Budweiser family and going, they drink a lot.
The moment he said it, Meghan's fairy tale narrative collapsed. Because if she really had researched Harry, his family, his life, then she knew exactly what she was walking into. And if she hadn't researched it at all, then what did that say about her judgment? Either way, her story didn't hold up under scrutiny. Rock framed her ignorance as impossible to believe. And the crowd agreed. The laughter was just about Meghan. It was about the realization that maybe, just maybe, the public had been conned. That the poor Meghan story was more calculated than genuine. And here's where things got really brutal. Rock gave the audience permission to think these thoughts out loud. Up until then, criticizing Meghan had been risky. It carried accusations of racism, cruelty, or insensitivity. But once Rock joked about it, once he ripped away the polite restraint, people felt free to laugh, free to share, free to agree. That's the thing about comedy. It doesn't just entertain, it legitimizes. It opens the door for conversations people were too afraid to have. Suddenly, Meghan Markle wasn't untouchable anymore.
This is sweet. Meghan Markle said she has a finger they can use if they need it.
Suddenly, Meghan Markle wasn't untouchable anymore. Suddenly, questioning her narrative wasn't taboo. It was funny. The illusion was cracked, and once it cracked, there was no putting it back together. A Netflix stay had done what the British tabloids, palace insiders, and countless articles couldn't do. It flipped public perception in real time. But Rock's attack was only the beginning, because once that illusion shattered, others saw their chance to pile on. And they didn't hesitate. The moment Rock's set dropped on Netflix, it was like blood and water. Within hours, clips of his Meghan jokes were everywhere, trending on Twitter, looping endlessly on TikTok, dissected in YouTube breakdowns. And when comedians see an easy target, they don't wait. They pounce. In the UK, where royal gossip is practically a national sport, comics sharpened their knives immediately. They painted Meghan and Harry as walking contradictions, obsessed with privacy while cashing giant Netflix checks, denouncing the royal family while still trading on the royal name, presenting themselves as victims while living in a California mansion surrounded by luxury. Every contradiction became a setup, every hypocrisy a punchline. Late-night hosts in America weren't far behind. Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, even Saturday Night Live. They all smelled opportunity. Meghan and Harry became the couple you didn't need to explain. Just saying, "want privacy" in a mocking voice was enough to get a laugh. That's when things got dangerous for Meghan, because comedy thrives.
Privacy! We want privacy! It's so quiet and empty here. If we moved her, then people would think we're really serious about wanting to be normal. It does seem perfect, doesn't it?
That's when things got dangerous for Meghan, because comedy thrives on repetition. The same joke told over and over by different voices on different stages stops sounding like a joke and starts sounding like truth. When Fallon made fun of her contradictions, then Colbert, then comedians on panel shows across the UK, the message was reinforced again and again. Meghan wasn't a misunderstood duchess, she was a hypocrite. Think about how quickly the narrative flipped. Before Rock's special, Meghan's defenders could argue nuance. They could claim the media was being unfair, that she had been misunderstood. But once the comedy machine latched on, there was no nuance. There were only punchlines. And the punchlines always made her look ridiculous. By week's end, Meghan wasn't a victim in the public eye anymore. She was a running gag, an easy laugh, a character in a never-ending comedy sketch where the contradictions in her life were too obvious, too exaggerated, and too funny to ignore. And here's the harsh reality. Once late-night comedy adopts you as a recurring character, you're done. Politicians survive scandals, celebrities bounce back from PR disasters. But when the entire comedy world decides you're shorthand for hypocrisy, that label sticks. It becomes cultural truth. Meghan Markle, once the sympathetic outsider, had become
Babe, time to do our daily $250,000 sponsored Instagram post.
I shouldn't have left the made-up nonsense.
The Duchess of Sussex shared a photo of herself cuddling her daughter on Instagram and a never-before-seen picture from her birth.
Meghan Markle, once the sympathetic outsider, had become the punchline a month. And in the world of comedy, that's a sentence worse than scandal. It's a permanent brand. But the real firestorm hadn't even begun, because when the internet got hold of Meghan's contradictions, it didn't just mock her, it weaponized her. If Chris Rock's Netflix cracked Meghan's narrative, meme culture was the wrecking ball that smashed it to pieces. Because once the internet gets involved, you don't just have critics. You have millions of comedians, remixers, satirists, and trolls all working for free, all day, every day. And Meghan, she was tailor-made for meme warfare. The moment Rock's jokes started circulating, TikTok and Twitter lit up. Clips of Meghan saying, "We want privacy," were spliced next to footage of her and Harry giving interviews, signing book deals, and dropping Netflix documentaries. Side-by-side comparisons flooded Instagram. On Reddit, entire threads were devoted to mocking the hypocrisy of demanding privacy while sitting down with Oprah on national television. Memes exaggerate reality. But here's the thing. Meghan had already written her own material. The contradictions in her life didn't need exaggerating, they just needed framing. And memes are the perfect framing device. A popular format showed Meghan looking distressed with the caption,
"Hey, it's the husband formerly known as Prince. Any luck getting a job?"
Oh, they had me driving for Uber Eats, but there were too many damn rules. Don't touch the food, don't taste the food, drive on the road.
"I'm sorry, Rowdy Weddy."
A popular format showed Meghan looking distressed with the caption, "I just want to be left alone," followed by an image of her waving from a talk show stage. Another meme featured the classic Drake format, rejecting silence and dignity, but celebrating another Netflix documentary. were just jokes. They were cultural commentary stripped down to one image and 10 words. And once the internet decides you're funny, it's over. Meghan wasn't seen as serious anymore. She wasn't the tragic duchess caught in a cruel system. She was a star of a never-ending meme cycle. Every new interview, every PR move, every leaked story just fueled the fire. The internet didn't need to wait for late-night shows. It created its own running gag that evolved in real time. And here's where it gets devastating. Memes aren't just entertainment. They spread faster than headlines, faster than fact checks, faster than official statements. By the time Meghan's team tried to push back on criticisms, the jokes had already gone viral. You can't issue a press release to stop a meme. You can't sue a TikTok edit. You can't fact check a punchline. This is the era we live in, an era where public
We want privacy! Well, I just think some people might say that your Instagram-loving wife actually doesn't want her privacy. How dare you, sir? My Instagram-loving wife has always wanted her privacy!
5 minutes later.
Who's filming this?
This is the era we live in, an era where public image is shaped not by news outlets, but by viral content. And Meghan Markle, whether she realized it or not, had become the internet's favorite punchline. But meme culture was just the beginning, because soon the most savage satire wasn't coming from TikTok or Twitter. It came from an animated show known for going where no one else dares, South Park. If Chris Rock was the spark and meme culture was the wildfire, South Park was the nuclear bomb. Because once Trey Parker and Matt decide to parody you, there's no turning back. They don't just mock, immortalize. They don't just make jokes, they create cultural verdicts. And Meghan Markle and Prince Harry were about to find themselves on the wrong side of one of the most ruthless comedy machines ever created. In February 2023,
Pretty girl, actress, influencer, victim.
Yeah, that's totally me! What matters is what we have on the inside.
In February 2023, South Park aired an episode titled The Worldwide Privacy Tour. In it, a thinly veiled version of Meghan and Harry go on a global journey shouting about how much they want privacy, all while holding press conferences, waving signs, and demanding attention at every turn. The satire was brutal because it was simple. Meghan and Harry were being mocked for the exact contradiction that had become their public identity. They claimed to want privacy, but their every action screamed otherwise. And South Park distilled that contradiction into a 22-minute cartoon that millions of people watched, shared, and quoted. One scene in particular went viral. Meghan and Harry's animated counterparts standing on a talk show stage, insisting they don't want publicity while promoting their book. The absurdity was undeniable. The comedy hit so hard because it reflected exactly what so many already believed. Meghan and Harry weren't victims of media attention. They were addicted to it. And here's why South Park mattered more than any meme or late-night monologue: longevity. A viral tweet comes and goes in hours. A TikTok trend burns out in days. But South Park episodes live forever. They get replayed, clipped, referenced, and written about for years. They become part of the cultural archive. When South Park mocks celebrities like Paris Hilton, Kanye West, or Tom Cruise, those portrayals stuck. People still remember them today. And Meghan Markle joined that infamous club. From that moment forward, no matter how hard she tried to reframe her image, she would always be a character from South Park screaming about privacy while selling her story to the highest bidder. The impact was immediate. Headlines exploded. South Park roasts Meghan and Harry.
Markle, the only thing she found was a rich, famous husband.
The nearest thing Meghan Markle ever had to a billion-dollar idea was marrying a prince.
The impact was immediate. Headlines exploded. South Park roasts Meghan and Harry. Brutal parody of the Sussexes goes viral. Comment sections lit up with viewers saying the episode said what we were all thinking. Meghan's brand took another blow. Not from gossip magazines, not from critics, but from animated satire that cut deeper than any royal scandal could. And the worst part? There was no comeback. You can fight a tabloid, you can rebut an article, can issue statements and sue newspapers. But how do you fight South Park? You don't. You can't. Because the moment you do, you look even more ridiculous. For Meghan Markle, the South Park effect was devastating because it was permanent. The episode turned her public persona into a cartoon, literally. And once you've been reduced to a cartoon, it's almost impossible to rebuild credibility. Chris Rock may have thrown the first punch, but South Park made sure Meghan would never stand back up. Once jokes, memes, animated satire had done their damage, traditional media piled on. And this is where the situation turned from embarrassing to catastrophic. Because when the late-night laughs die down, when the trending hashtags fade, it's the headlines, op-eds, and talk show debates that solidify public perception. And for Meghan Markle, those conversations weren't flattering. In Britain, tabloids that had once been criticized for their relentless coverage now felt vindicated. Chris Rock, South Park, and meme culture had made it safe for everyone to say what they had been saying all along. Meghan and Harry were hypocrites. Columnists wrote with smug satisfaction, declaring that comedy had finally exposed the truth. The tone shifted from cautious commentary to open mockery. American outlets weren't much kinder. While Meghan had initially found support in U.S. media, where her Oprah interview was treated like a cultural milestone, the backlash after Rock and South Park was harder to ignore. Op-eds in mainstream newspapers began questioning her credibility. Backlash after Rock and South Park was harder to ignore. Op-ed mainstream newspapers began questioning her credibility. Entertainment journalists openly debated whether the couple had overplayed their hand. Even sympathetic.
I'm going to succeed in America. I need a lifestyle brand of creams and supplements. Gwyneth Paltrow has Goop, Kourtney Kardashian has Poosh, and Jamie Lee Curtis has Poogert. Now I've got mine, Meg Goo, celebrating the sexy earth goddess in all of us.
Even sympathetic voices admitted the privacy while profiting narrative was impossible to defend. Morning shows like Good Morning America and Today dissected the comedy bits as if they were political scandals. Clips of Rock's and South Park's episode rolled across screens while hosts asked, "Do Harry and Meghan have a point anymore?" Talk radio and podcasts went even further, treating the couple as a punchline for ratings. The media smelled blood, and they knew the audience wanted it. And here's the real problem for Meghan. Comedy criticism is one thing, but when serious media outlets adopt those jokes as framing devices, it becomes almost impossible to claw your way back. Every article about her carried the shadow of Rock's joke. Every news segment referenced South Park. The narrative wasn't just Meghan wants privacy, it was Meghan wants privacy. Ha! This shift was subtle, but devastating. Meghan's defenders, once quick to rally on social media, struggled to keep up. How do you argue against a cartoon? How do you fact-check a punchline? The media no longer asked whether Meghan was treated unfairly by the royals. Instead, they asked whether Meghan was capable of honesty at all. And the fallout spread beyond just Meghan. Prince Harry, who had spent years defending her, now looked complicit. His memoir, Spare, which he hoped would redefine the couple's story, was mocked as another cash grab. Jokes about privacy tours overshadowed any genuine revelations he tried to make. The brand they had built together, once seen as revolutionary and defiant, was now synonymous with contradiction. What Meghan and Harry didn't seem to realize was that media credibility works like a bank account. You build it slowly over years with authenticity and consistency. But when you overdraft, when you say one thing and do another, you don't just lose credibility, you go bankrupt. And in the aftermath of Rock and South Park, Meghan Markle's credibility account was in the red. The media fallout cemented what comedy had exposed, and by the time the storm settled,
you have been working so hard. Oh my God. You're probably the hardest worker in the world. I don't know anybody that's worked as hard as you. I don't know, I'm just doing my best.
It's the biggest piece of dog
The big revelation was that Meghan said that she and Harry actually got married 3 days before the royal wedding. Great, now I feel like a fool for waking up at 5 a.m. to watch two married people get married.
Media fallout cemented what comedy had exposed. And by the time the storm settled, the damage was clear. Meghan's image wasn't just bruised, it was broken. But the question remained, what did this mean on a deeper cultural level? What did this spectacle reveal about us, about fame, and about the public's appetite for takedowns? When the dust cleared, Meghan Markle's reputation wasn't just dented, it had been redefined. And the cultural verdict was as harsh as it was simple. Meghan Markle had become a symbol of hypocrisy. Think about it. For years, her narrative had been...
Don't call another human being your highness.
Who destroyed her in-laws' family, whose own family doesn't like her, whose the in-laws obviously don't like her, the public doesn't like her. She's stuck because she was an actress who became a real princess, who wants to be an actress again, but has to continue to pretend to be a real princess.
For years, her narrative had been carefully curated. The outsider who married into the monarchy, the victim of institutional cruelty, the woman who bravely told her truth to the world. That was her brand. But once comedy got hold of her story, the brand collapsed. She was no longer the heroine of her own fairy tale. She was the punchline of ours. And this verdict mattered because comedy doesn't just reflect culture, it shapes it. When people laugh at something, they internalize it. They accept it as obvious, as true. It's why politicians fear late-night jokes more than negative headlines. Headlines can be rebutted. Jokes stick in your brain. Meghan Markle became shorthand for contradiction. Anytime someone loudly claimed they wanted privacy while courting attention, people compared them to Meghan. The name itself became a joke, a reference point for double standards. That's how cultural verdicts work. They reduce complexity to a single, universally understood idea. And Meghan's idea was hypocrisy. But the cultural impact didn't stop with her. The spectacle revealed something larger about us, the audience. We live in an age where authenticity is currency. We crave it. We demand it. And when someone is exposed as inauthentic, the backlash is swift, merciless. Meghan's downfall wasn't just about her contradictions. It was about our collective intolerance for being manipulated. There's also a cruel irony here. Meghan and Harry tried to control their narrative by bypassing traditional institutions. They thought by going straight to the public, through interviews, documentaries, and memoirs, they could win sympathy and reshape the story. But in doing so, they overexposed themselves. They gave the world too much material, too many contradictions, too many opportunities for ridicule. And once comedy weaponized that overexposure, the narrative spun out of their control. Instead of owning their story, they became owned by it. The cultural verdict on Meghan Markle was clear. She was no longer a misunderstood outsider. She was a cautionary tale, a case study in how quickly sympathy can turn to mockery when authenticity falters. For Meghan, the judgment was brutal. For the rest of us, it was a reminder. In a world where every action is scrutinized, where comedy and memes amplify contradictions instantly, authenticity isn't optional, it's survival. By the end of it all, Meghan Markle's downfall wasn't caused by the monarchy, the tabloids, or even her own...
God, that hat. Oh, God. He's so hot. Look at him. Isn't Prince Harry? I mean, she bagged a fox.
By the end of it all, Meghan Markle's downfall wasn't caused by the monarchy, the tabloids, or even her own missteps alone. It was caused by something far more powerful, far more unpredictable, and far more permanent. Comedy. Chris Rock lit the fuse with a few sharp lines in a Netflix special. Meme culture turned those sparks into a wildfire, spreading images and captions across every platform until the joke became bigger than the story itself. South Park dropped the hammer, immortalizing Meghan and Harry as cartoon versions of themselves, doomed to live forever on the internet as hypocritical caricatures. And then the media sealed coffin, turning satire into narrative and narrative into truth. This is the anatomy of a...
H was accepted. H has been, and H called me. In with H, and H was out, and with H.
This is the anatomy of a takedown in the modern era. It doesn't happen in Parliament, it doesn't happen in Buckingham Palace, it doesn't even happen in the pages of a tabloid. It happens in punchlines, in memes, in viral videos, and animated parodies. The court of public opinion doesn't deliberate with reason. It laughs, it shares, it mocks. And once that laughter takes hold, it becomes the truth. For Meghan Markle, the tragedy is that she had all the makings of a powerful story. She could have been the outsider who forced an ancient institution to reckon with its flaws. She could have been the figure who symbolized modernity crashing into tradition. But instead, she became the woman who demanded privacy on a global press tour. The comedy was too easy, the contradictions too glaring, and in a world addicted to authenticity, she came across as the opposite. The lesson here isn't just about Meghan, it's about everyone in the public eye. In the digital age, image is no longer controlled by PR teams or press releases. It's controlled by audience, by the collective swarm of comedians, meme makers, satirists, and commentators who can take a single contradiction and weaponize it in cultural consensus. One misstep becomes a running gag. One exaggeration becomes a meme. One contradiction becomes a cartoon. And once you're a joke, you're done. Because jokes don't fade, they echo. They get clipped, replayed, referenced, and embedded into the cultural memory. People may forget the details of Spare or the exact word of the Oprah interview, but they'll always remember South Park's worldwide privacy tour, They'll always remember Chris Rock's punchline. They'll always remember the memes. That's the final verdict. Meghan Markle wasn't destroyed by ill, she wasn't undone by secrets, and she wasn't toppled by politics. She was taken down by laughter. And that's the ultimate irony, because for all the seriousness of her claims, for all the weight she tried to carry, the story of Meghan Markle ended not with tragedy, but with comedy. Not with tears, but with punchlines. Not with dignity, but with memes. History may one day reassess Meghan Markle, but in the culture we live in,
prove that you're enough. You have to prove that you're pretty enough. You have to prove that you're smart enough. You prove that you're a good wife or a good friend. Or
Meghan Markle's sitting here talking about, like, yeah, I gotta prove that I'm pretty. And while she's a pretty woman sitting across from a bratwurst.
Yes. History may one day reassess Meghan Markle, but in the culture we live in now, the one that thrives on satire and shares jokes faster than facts, her fate is already sealed. She is no longer the Duchess. She is no longer the outsider. She is no longer the victim. She is the punchline. And in the modern world, there is no coming back from that.